Hi, in this Unity tutorial, we're going to go over how to set up the sprite sorting order automatically. So what I mean by the sprite sorting order is this. Say we have a sprite that's here on the screen, like here, and then we have another one here. Now, they're not drawn in the same place, so it's not a contest of who's going to draw on top of who. But let's say I take the puppy dog and there's going to come the point where they're going to be over each other. How do you control which one's in front and which one's in back? So if you want to manually control that, that's basically the order and layer. So right now they're both set to 0, so it's really, you don't have any control over it. But if I set this sprite with a more negative number, so they're both at 0, now I'm setting this one to -1, then this sprite will be behind that sprite, okay? And then if I set this to a positive number, more positive than this guy's at 0, the puppy, and the yellow circle, then that will be in front. So that's us controlling manually the positioning, the ordering of the sprites, like which one draws on top of which one. But what I want to do now is I want to make it that, let's say we want to have like some sprites around the screen, and when the puppy's going through here, we want it to be that up here, if the puppy's more lower than this guy, then he's in front. We're going to do some automatic sprite sorting. Let me just show you what I mean. So there's a setting over here. Now that these are all set to layer 0, layer 0, layer 0. And what I want to do is I want to control the layer based on how low or close the puppy is to this part of the screen, how close the puppy is to me. Whichever sprite is closer, I want it to be on top. So I could do that by a project setting. So I'll go to Edit, Project Settings, and a window like this should come up. This is Unity 2018.3, so the project settings window kind of comes up with all the different settings you could pick. And pick the graphics. And over here, we have the transparency sort mode. It's set to default, which is the way we see it acting. What I want to do is I want to set it to custom, and I want to have it determine which one's in front based on the y-axis. Okay, since I'm only in 2D, I only have the x and the y. So the closer the y, the more in front it's going to be instead. So custom axis and set y to 1 and z to 0. Now, when I move the puppy, if the puppy's higher, it's going to be behind. If the puppy's lower, it should be in front. Okay, so that's good. Now, what happens is these little, you see this little circle here? That's the pivot point of my sprite. So basically, if I were to rotate the sprite, it pivots around that pivot point. And when the pivot point is what's being used to decide who's in front of who. So here's this pivot point in its Y position, and this is this pivot point in this Y position. So if the pivot point is above, then the puppy's above. If the pivot point is below, then the puppy is below. But what we really want to have here is the pivot point be at the feet, because that's the point where we imagine our characters touching the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change, let me just fix them up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the pivot point of the sprites from being in the center of the sprite to be down by their feet. So to do that, I select the sprite in the assets window. Here's the dog, and I go to the sprite editor. Now in the sprite editor, here's the blue point. That's the pivot point. What I just do is I take it and I could drag it down to the feet and then say apply. And then I do that for the happy face to the other object and drag it down to the feet and say apply. So now with the second option now, see the pivot point is here. The blue dot is there on both of them. Now this pivot point being down at the bottom will control it. So if I am closer to bottom, hey, he's in front. If I'm higher, he's in back. So it kind of matches up a little bit better to where I am in the scene. And that's how you could do some automatic sorting, layer sorting for sprites based on the Y position. Y being closer over here and being in front, and in the back being further away, being in back. There you go.